everybody, Andrei from CFX Films here, and welcome to part 4 of my menu tutorial series. I guess this is a modern sleek menu. I still don't know what to call it, but that's not important. I'll have the title in the video, you know what you're watching. So that's that. So welcome back, and in this video we are going to be going into the settings menu and writing the script for the options. So this is in my last video, if you watched it, you remember me mentioning that I'm using player prefs to save data, and we are going to use that to save a series of values that can then be recalled during the game in order to properly save the options that you set. So whether or not the game's full screen or the resolution settings or the texture quality, it's just different. There are different options, and this is the script that is actually going to allow you to set that. Okay, I'm going to load up the script here, and I actually just removed what I wrote previously. So this is the options menu script that I wrote prior to this video, and I actually placed it on the canvas options. So as you can see here, there's actually nothing, there's no variables, nothing. So this is the object that we're going to add it on, and then everything else is going to be calling from this, this parent object. So let's go back in and let's actually start writing. So the first thing we have to do is create the variables. Now there are going to be quite a few, so bear with me. First one, oh, actually, remember, we have to Unity engine.ui. This is how you, again, you have to call the Unity UI library, otherwise it won't be able to recognize your commands. All right. These are all the toggle buttons. Now I'm going to create a series of variables, and you're going to hear a lot of keyboard clicks. So I'm going to do my best to not make it so annoying, but bear with me. So I'm just going to skip this part, and I'm going to have the video cut to where I've actually entered in all these variables. And that way you don't actually have to watch me slowly type in every single variable. I will have all the variables copy and pasted into the description of this video. So just so you can take an extra look at that, they're actually there for you. Okay. I zoomed in a bit so you can actually see this, but I entered in all the different options that we have here. So we have the full screen, we have the shadow, low and high and off, we have the whether or not to show the tooltips, the difficulty settings, camera effects, invert mouse, vsync, motion blur, ambient occlusion, textures, and then the anti-aliasing. And then down here we have the sliders. So we have the music slider, sound effects slider, and then the sensitivity slider, which is going to be accessing the camera script in-game, and then it's going to talk to that variable because it's a public variable, and then it's going to set that value depending on what we set it to. And mouse smooth is built into that camera script, so we actually just have another variable that's going to call that, so you can actually set whether or not, I guess, how smooth you want the variable to be. So that's helpful. And then here are the actual float values for those sliders. And this is going to become important later. So how this is going to work is we're going to create our start function. And basically in this function is when we're going to determine how it's going to check all the variables so it actually remembers the settings that you saved the last time you ran the game. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to check the difficulty. Purpose, get int, oh. So basically what this means is if the normal difficulty is set to 1, then you know that the difficulty is set to normal. And if it's anything other than 1, you know that it's set to hardcore, which is the other difficulty setting that I had set in here. And what you can do with this value is any enemies that you have in the game or any environmental factors or anything that is going to make the game more difficult for the player, you can call this value and check to see, oh, if it's 1, then let's say make the enemy do twice as much or half the damage. And then if it's not 1, make them do twice as much damage. So sort of this if-else scenario. So now we're just going to make the highlight effects show up. That's actually all we need. Now we have our little else effect, and then we just, honestly, we can copy and paste this so it does the opposite. This is exactly what I was just saying. So it's either normal or it's hardcore. And that way we highlight the proper effects so the player has an indication of what option they've actually selected. All right, now we're going to check the music and sound effect sliders, actually all the slider values. All right, so it's checking that float valuable. We're just going to copy and paste this, and we're going to change this to sound effects slider, and then it's going to be SFX volume. We're going to copy and paste this again, and this is now going to be sensitivity X slider, and this is going to be X sensitivity. Copy and paste this and do the same thing for the Y value. Mouse smoothing. I'm just going to copy and paste this. There you go. And this is mouse smoothing valuable. Why do I keep saying valuable? So this is arbitrary. These names here, you can choose whatever you want. This is just the value. This is the text that I chose. You can make this a blah 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 blah. You can do that, but you just have to remember what you actually called it so you can properly call it when you're actually trying to return the value that you have saved in the float. So I recommend actually naming them something that you'll be able to remember. All right, check if it's full screen. If the screen is full screen, double equals, then full screen text dot get component text dot text equals on. I'm going to copy and paste this. Else if is false, then we're going to set equal to off. Okay, awesome. Check HUD value. This is the option of whether or not we have the HUD enabled. Okay, else on. And basically you have to do this for every single option. So that's why the start function honestly is the longest and the most important step here. Now we had a tooltip option. So this is if player prefs dot get int tooltips. I'm going to do, I have that actually, case sensitive. Tooltipstext get component text dot text equals off. Copy, else, paste, on, save. Now we get to the shadows. This one's going to be a little long. check shadow distance and enabled values. If player prefs get int shadows equals 0, then we're going to access the quality settings. Shadow cascades is equal to 0. Quality settings, shadow distance, so that's the rendering distance. Shadowoftext, get component, text equals, so they know which one is highlighted, off, all capital. And now we're gonna copy and paste it. So there's gonna be low and high, all lowercase. So this is shadow low, shadow high, and now we do shadowofftextLINE, so that's the highlight effect, and enable the off one. Shadow low is going to be off and shadow high. Okay, and now we just copy and paste this. So now we have to do another else if statement. So if shadows is equal to 1, cascades 2, let's do distance 75. Now off is lowercase, low is uppercase, low is true, not false, and everything else is false. And then we're going to copy and paste this again. And now it's 2. So cascades will be 4. Rendering distance is 400. Same process here. And now we're going to copy and paste that. Honestly, you can copy and paste, type it in, do whatever you want, just as long as the values are right. And that, honestly, is it for shadow distance. Okay, a lot of lines of code, I know. Next, check the vertical sync, or vsync. If quality settings vsync count is 0, vsynctext, we're going to make the text say off. Else, if it's set to 1, on. And honestly, there are different values for vsync, but I just kept it simple, 0 and 1. I think there's actually a 2 value, but that's optional. Check if mouse is inverted. So this is going to be player prefs dot get int inverted. If it's 0, then invertmousetext get component text.text equals off. And then we copy and paste it again, but set it to 1 and then set it to on. Okay, good. Next, check motion blur. Honestly, I'm just going to copy and paste this whole thing. So motion blur, because it also uses a 0 and 1 definition. So we're going to do motion blur text. There you go. And now I'm going to copy and paste this whole thing again. And we're going to do check ambient occlusion. So ambient occlusion 0 and 1. And this is ambient occlusion text. There you go. And now texture, texture quality, that's what this is. Okay, so check texture quality. If player prefs get int textures is equal to 0, then quality settings dot master texture limit is going to equal 2. That's pretty low. Texturelowtext dot get component text dot text equals low, all capital. Now we're going to type this out just once, and then we're going to copy and paste it for the others, but I'm typing it out once so you can actually see what I'm doing. lowercase medium, texture high text.getComponent text.text equals high, all lowercase. All right, highlight effects, GameObject.active equals true, texture medium text line, GameObject.active equals false. I saw that. Okay. Texture high text line dot game object active equals false. Great. Now we can copy and paste this. Else if is set to 1. Then we're going to change master texture limit to 1. Low is now lowercase, medium. Awesome. One more time. Okay, getting through this again. Sweet. And that is it for checking the variables. Now, honestly, you could have a million more if you wanted. Okay, not exactly a million, but you could have many more options if you actually wanted to. Function, update. Now, this is where we're going to make the slider values equivalent to their proper values on runtime. Music slider.getComponents, and we're going to access the slider on it, and we're going to set its value. So we're going to do that for all of them. I'm going to copy and paste this getComponent part. Okay, slider value x sensitivity is going to be sensitivity x slider getComponent. Okay. Slider value smoothing equals mouse smooth slider. Sweet. Okay, that is it for update. Now, this is where we actually change the values. So when you actually select an option on the options menu, these are the functions that are actually called. For example, full screen. This is where you're going to change whether or not the window is in full screen or not. So if screen is this is checking the full screen. Okay, so it's going to change it whenever you call full screen. It's going to change it to whatever it is not. As in, if it's full screen, it's going to change it to windowed, and if it's windowed, it's going to change it to full screen. That's what this line of code does. Okay, if screen full screen equals true, let's scroll down here. We can zoom in even a little bit more. Then full screen text.getComponent text.text equals on. Yeah. Okay. Music slider and sound effect slider. Honestly, all the sliders. Let's do that now. Now it's setting the music volume variable to slider value. Let's copy and paste this. Sound effect slider, SFX volume to slider value SFX. Sensitivity X slider, X sensitivity to slider value X sensitivity. And change it, same thing to Y. Okay. Now we're going to do sensitivity smoothing. And this is going to be mouse smoothing, slider value smoothing. Function show HUD. Now you can see why I split this up into 2 videos. This isn't actually the most exciting tutorial you've ever seen, but honestly, coding isn't always exciting. Now we're setting those float values. I need to stop saying valuables. Great. Now we're going to do tooltips. So if tooltips is set to 0, tooltips text is going to change to on. Okay, so all this is fine. Normal difficulty. Difficulty hardcore text highlight effect. Change that to false. Difficulty normal text line game object active equals true. And then now we set the normal difficulty to 1. And then we set the hardcore difficulty to 0. And now we do the same thing for hard core difficulty. And we just reverse it. There you go. Now shadows off. I can understand that if you are not the fastest typer in the world, that this will become very monotonous and boring and challenging. So I hope you appreciate the fact that I'm giving you the code, so you don't actually have to type all this. As long as you understand what I'm doing, you'll be fine. And I understand that many of you will just end up using what I'm writing here and just copying and pasting and not even, really considering it, because hey, it's a free menu, right? And it looks great, and you can use it because it's free, and you won't have to give me credit because he'll never know. I know if you're using it. Honestly, I don't really care because it's not really going to get you anywhere if you don't learn how to do it yourself, because you're sort of just lying to yourself. And that's why I make these tutorials, because I want you to not be lying to yourself. All right, that was shadows off. Now we're going to do shadows low. And that is equivalent to 1. Now you can see here that we're entering these same values that we did in the start function. That's because there we were checking to see what setting you had initially loaded up so it could set these values. Here is where you can actually change it in-game. So that's why we're typing it again. Honestly, I probably could write a separate function that just calls them again so we don't have to write the same lines of code, but that's what I didn't do here, unfortunately. You can actually probably do that if you learn how I actually wrote this code, which honestly it's pretty straightforward, then you can actually fix it yourself. Find a better solution than what I did. I'm silent because you understand what I'm doing by this point. And then copy and paste. Thank goodness that copy and paste is a thing, because if this wasn't a thing, oh man, I don't know what I'd be doing. I wouldn't be encoding. Camera effects. We're almost done here, guys and girls. We're getting there. After this, all we got is the textures, the texture quality, and then we're done. Cameraeffectstext.get component text.text equals on. Copy and paste this. Nice. Okay, all we got left is the textures. So let's see if I can do this quickly. I'm curious, actually. I wonder if I can just copy and paste what I wrote up here. Yeah. So I'm going to copy the check texture quality and paste it there. So I can actually just copy and paste it like that. Okay. Okay, that actually works. Textures medium. We'll copy that, and then function textures high. So I'm going to copy and paste that, and then I'm going to copy and paste that, delete this, reformat this. If you hold shift and tab, it moves it back one tab space, and then if you hold tab, or I mean if you just press tab, it moves it forward. So here we're just going to set textures the player press value so we can actually check it. And there you go. Okay, guys, that is the entire script. Let's zoom out here and show you everything. Congratulations, you now have an options menu. So let's minimize this now. Let's let it save and load up here all the variable spaces that we're going to have. And we got an error. So let's fix some errors. Get int. I have some typos. get int simple mistakes, just simple typos. Okay, there we go. There we go. Now we got all these variables. Now we got to assign every single one. Here we go. So, full screen text. Let's do full screen text is going to go, oh no. Okay, so I'm actually going to have to load up every single one here. Okay. Full screen text. Shadowoftext. Offline. Where is that located? Here it is. Low line, high line, shadows, high text, shadows, low text. Now we have every single one actually set. And the way you would actually call them, so let's load up the game panel. So each one of these are buttons. So if we load it up, if you look at the hard difficulty, you select the canvas options. So whatever the script, the options menu is actually on, then you add this on click event. Go to options menu, find it, and then find the actual function that you wrote. So in this case, it would be hardcore difficulty. And then for normal, it's normal difficulty. And you do this for every single text. And honestly, in the end, you get this. So everyone actually realigns. I mean, here we have, it seems I got rid of the anti-aliasing effect, so I don't actually have them enabled, but you can see how that would actually work. So everyone you click, it changes the text. Oh, motion blur seems to be off too. But texture quality, you can see how it adjusts. Camera effects, which is on and off. Full screen's the same thing, but you can't adjust your full screen in the editor. And in controls, it's updating the slider effect. And then invert mouse works. Let me go into the slider effects really quick and show you how it's updating. So here we have a drag event trigger. So the value is from 0 to 1. So you can see the slider changing there live. And because it's a float that we're checking, that is in the range of 0 to 1. So you want to make sure that you actually have this max value at 0 to 1. If you have 0 to 5, then the max value that it'll ever reach is 1, and you don't want that. You can use whole numbers too, but that's, I mean, that's different type of number tracking. So you're accessing the update volume. So this is where we have, it's going to be checking the music volume. In the last video, we actually had that script. So I actually can have it opened up. Yeah. So it's going to be updating it as you're dragging. So you're going to be updating the actual audio source volume to whatever that float value is from 0 to 1. So here it's updating it live. So that's how, as you're dragging the slider, you hear the volume changing. An options menu music slider, it's actually changing the float value. So that way it's saving it. So the next time you load it up, it's going to actually have this value set. So it's going to check. So in the start, you actually have that value saved already. So that's how that works. I hope that makes sense, because it took me a little while to actually figure out how to get that to work, but it does work well now. And honestly, guys, that is the rest of how I made this menu. I hope you found this helpful. Again, I'm posting the code so you can download this and use this project. I hope that you found this helpful, and I hope you learned something. I really hope that you guys will be using this, and I'm looking forward to seeing how you modify it and just change it up and do some really cool menus in Unity. And I appreciate you watching this. Let me know what you thought in the comment section below, and let me know if you liked it, didn't like it, what you want to see from me in the future. Appreciate everything you guys do for me. Thank you so much. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.